to 5D. So tonight we are going to talk about the carbon dioxide oxygen cycle. So you want to make sure you're on page 137 and you have this handout that I gave you today. So today we talked about photosynthesis, and we talked about how plants have to undergo that process called photosynthesis in order to produce their own food, that glucose that they use. And we talked about how it needs carbon dioxide, so the plants have to have carbon dioxide in order for photosynthesis to happen. And then once they have their sunlight, their carbon dioxide, the water, it cooks up and it produces glucose, and it also produces oxygen, which the plant does not need, so it releases it into the atmosphere. And we are going to focus on those two gases, the carbon dioxide and the oxygen. We want to focus on that exchange. We want to focus on what we're going to call the exchange of gases. Remember, carbon dioxide and oxygen are gases, and we're going to focus on how they are exchanged between plants and animals and humans, and the importance of how much plants and animals rely on each other in order to survive through the carbon dioxide oxygen cycle. So the first thing we're going to start off doing is we're going to diagram the process happening. So we're going to draw a tree, or if you would like to draw a plant, you could draw a flower, whatever you want to draw. We know we are going to draw a plant, some type of plant. And then you're also going to draw a human. You could draw like a little animal. I know we all like pigs in this class, so maybe you draw a little pig. Okay, so we have our plants over here, and we have our animals and humans on this side. Okay, so the first thing we want to focus on is how the plants are going to undergo photosynthesis. Okay, so we know that plants have to go through photosynthesis in order to make their own food. We know when the plants make their own food, they're going to produce or make glucose, and they're also going to release oxygen. Okay, so the plants give off oxygen. Okay, they release oxygen into the atmosphere. We as humans need to take in oxygen in order for us to breathe. Okay, so oxygen is very important to us for our breathing. So when photosynthesis, when that plant releases the oxygen into the atmosphere, humans and animals, we're going to take that oxygen in. So this arrow is showing the oxygen being released or emitted or giving off. Those are all synonyms. It's giving it off into the atmosphere, and then we and humans and animals, we are taking it in. So we take in the oxygen, and then we use that oxygen, like I said, to help us breathe. That process is called respiration. Okay? So humans need oxygen so that we can go through respiration, which is what's going to help us breathe. Okay? When we take in the oxygen, we use the oxygen to breathe. When we breathe out, we release a gas into the atmosphere. We release carbon dioxide. Okay? So we go through respiration, we release carbon dioxide, and then who's going to use that carbon dioxide? The plants. Okay? Because the plants need carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. So this is our carbon dioxide oxygen cycle. Okay, and it goes and around and around and around and around. It's always happening. That's why it's called a cycle. The plants take in carbon dioxide. Photosynthesis happens. Photosynthesis makes glucose and then releases oxygen into the atmosphere. Humans and animals go through respiration, breathe in that oxygen, release the carbon dioxide. It gets taken in by the plant, and the cycle starts over and over and over again. Okay, so let's talk about why this cycle is important for plants and why it's important for animals. Okay, so think about it. Look at this diagram. Okay, let's look at the plant. Why is this cycle so important for the plants? Think about it. Okay, what do the plants need from this cycle? Do they need the carbon dioxide or do they need the oxygen? They need the carbon dioxide. So the importance for plants is they need, and remember we learned that CO2 stands for carbon dioxide. They need CO2, they need that carbon dioxide for photosynthesis to happen. Okay, if we don't breathe out photosynthesis, if we don't breathe out carbon dioxide, will photosynthesis happen? No. And if photosynthesis doesn't happen, will the plant make its own food? And if the plant doesn't make its own food, will it survive? Absolutely not. Okay, so that leads into why is it important for animals? Okay, so think about it. In the carbon dioxide oxygen cycle, do we and animals, do we need the carbon dioxide or do we need the oxygen? Okay, we need the oxygen. So this cycle is important for us and animals because we need oxygen to breathe. Okay, so the cycle is important to both of us, and as you can see, plants and animals are very dependent on each other. We have to have plants in order for our survival, and plants need to have us in order for their optimal survival. So make sure you think about those things. You need to be able to know how to diagram the cycle on your own and label it appropriately with oxygen or carbon dioxide. So make sure that you study this. It's a simple memorization thing of who's getting the oxygen, who's using it, who's producing it. Same thing for the carbon dioxide. You also want to think about things like if we add more trees into an ecosystem, what's that going to produce more of? Okay, the more trees that I have, the more photosynthesis that is happening, the more oxygen that's going to be released into the environment. If I cut down a bunch of trees, okay, what is there going to be less of in the environment now? Okay, there's going to be less oxygen, and then that will ultimately have an effect on the ecosystem. So make sure you have this page filled out, make sure you understand it in your brain, and be ready to talk about the carbon dioxide oxygen cycle tomorrow.